Welcome to 8 Ways to Wellness. Discover the dimensions for a healthier you. Occupational well-being. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has identified 8 dimensions of wellness to focus on to optimize health. The University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension has developed this module based on the work of SAMHSA along with other research-based resources. Before we get started, when you think about well-being at work, what does that mean to you? So what are the 8 dimensions? In contrast to poor health, wellness is the state of living a healthy lifestyle. It's an ongoing process and lifelong journey, not a one-time event. Wellness is often categorized into several interconnected dimensions. It's a holistic integration of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. This slide illustrates 8 different dimensions of wellness: environmental, emotional, financial, social, spiritual, occupational, which is what we're covering today, physical, and intellectual. There needs to be a balance among all the dimensions in order to live your life fully. However, that balance is going to look very different for each person, depending on their individual beliefs, priorities, and aspirations. The goal is to find a personal harmony with the dimensions that's most authentic for you. The goal is not to try to feel overwhelmed by how much you have to do in order to feel balanced in every category. It really is about finding that personal harmony that is authentic for you. You can't reach a state of wellness passively. It requires active awareness, acceptance, and commitment through choices you make every day, no matter how small. So our discussion today will focus on occupational wellness. In other words, finding paid or volunteer work that connects to your values and needs while fostering healthy work relationships and finding time for engaging in your favorite leisure activities. So our objectives are to help you understand how aligning your work with values, talents, gifts, and knowledge contributes to your wellness, to learn to cultivate a healthy work environment through relationship building, and to understand how to be more intentional about spending time on things you enjoy outside of work. Occupational wellness can be divided into 3 different categories. Feeling fulfilled and satisfied in your work. This includes knowing how our values, talents, skills, and interests align with our job as a key contributor to finding fulfillment in our work. Celebrating your contributions and accomplishments, and treating each hiccup, mistake, or failure as data, something you can learn from. It also includes making time for leisure activities. All work and no play doesn't make you dull, but it is unhealthy. And finally, cultivating healthy working relationships. We're at work for a large chunk of our day, so the better we can navigate relationships at work, the more motivated and fulfilled we'll be. Okay, so let's start by elevating one or more of our values, talents, skills, or strengths. We'll do this by coming up with a superhero name. This activity, like any activity we do, is optional. And at the same time, we encourage you to practice some vulnerability and getting out of your comfort zone as much as you're able to do. So for this activity, think of one of the values, talents, skills, or strengths that you're proud of. If you aren't sure, then just choose something you know that you do well and brings you joy. It can be something that seems small to you, like being organized or being the life of the party or staying fit. It can really be anything as part of your personal or professional life. So for example, I might choose being the life of the party. I love to make other people feel joy through, through showing up fully at a party and entertaining others. So maybe I would choose entertaining as my value, talent, skill, or strength. I could go even further than that and translate that to hosting. I love hosting parties. Okay, so that's what I'm going to choose. I'll choose hosting for this example. So that's the talent that I have. I'm good at hosting. So now that I have that in mind, and once you have something in mind, think of a superhero name and gesture that relates to that. So, for example, multitasking man, or captain organizer, or super fun woman, or captain connector. And in my case, I'm going to choose super host. So take a moment to think about how you might describe yourself and what kind of stance you might take. So a stance is anything at all that exhibits some sort of confidence in that superhero name that you're taking on. So for super fun woman, I'm putting my fist up into the air in triumph, right? So some other examples of stances might be, think of Superman with his hands on his hips standing tall, or the Black Panther with his fists at his sides, or Wonder Woman with her wrist cuffs in the air, right? So these are power poses, and they may feel a little silly, and I completely admit that, but they work. Okay, so now we're going to share our name and our gesture with each other. I encourage you to really commit to this and be large. Do this with confidence and authority. Really believe that you are super host in my case. No matter how silly you think you sound, try to commit to it. So once you say your superhero name and you do your gesture, everyone is going to copy you. And we're going to go down the line like that. So copy and repeat after me. As I'm putting my fist in the air, I'm saying, I am Superhost. And now everyone copy. I am Superhost. And now you try. Okay, so how did that activity feel? How did you choose your hero name and your gesture? How do you feel now compared with before we started? And how does this relate to wellness at work? You can put your answer to any of those in the chat or pause here to have a discussion. So where will you place your effort? As psychologist and researcher Carol Dweck has said, effort is one of the things that gives meaning to life. Effort means you care about something, that something is important to you, and you are willing to work for it. It would be an impoverished existence if you were not willing to value things and commit yourself to working toward them. Again, that quote was from Carol Dweck, psychologist and researcher. So this has a lot to do with knowing your values, knowing your strengths, and setting personal goals. For knowing your values, there are entire books, retreats, and workshops dedicated to helping people find their core values. What it comes down to is acknowledging the principles that guide us through life on a day-to-day basis. In our youth, we often learn these values from people in our environment, like parents, teachers, family members, and the community or society at large. It's a good idea to check in with ourselves from time to time about our values and ask ourselves if anything has changed. Are these values still important to us? Are there other things that we value? Since our values are tied to our intrinsic motivation, when we are able to live our values, our actions are aligned with the things that are really important to us. So knowing your strengths, just like values, when we can use our strengths, our overall happiness gets a boost, particularly if we're using them to support our values. Strengths are often the things that come naturally to us, sometimes so much so that we don't even recognize them as a strength. And finally, set personal goals. Setting personal goals for our own growth or enjoyment are important to finding some balance in our life. A lot of our identity often gets tied into what we do for a living. Try to remember that you are not only your job. Since our careers take up a large portion of time, they are an important part of our overall wellness. Even if we are in a job that is fulfilling, rewarding, and is aligned with our values and strengths, we still need to make sure to explore other facets of our lives. So many other factors go into who you are, and your job is just the tip of the iceberg. What are some other things that define who we are? This visualization and reflection activity, commonly referred to as You at Your Best, is designed to help uncover values, strengths, and skills you exhibited at a time when you felt that you were at your best. Understanding your values, strengths, and skills is a good starting place for aligning your work with what you care about. Finding meaningful, fulfilling work is an important part of your occupational wellness. We'll start with a visualization, follow it up with reflection, and then explore where there is or isn't alignment with your current occupation. To start, close your eyes if you feel comfortable with that, or choose to look at a place on the floor in front of you to focus softly. If you like, you can take a couple of deep breaths. Think of a time when you were at your best. Everything was going well. You felt successful. Or maybe you felt particularly happy from engaging in an activity or from an accomplishment. You were really on. You felt fulfilled and confident. This can be a work situation or a personal experience. Once you have something in mind, try to fully recall the scene. What was happening? Who was there? What were you doing? What were others doing? And where were you? When you're ready, open your eyes. Take a piece of paper and list out the values, strengths, and skills that were present in that moment or time of life. Once you have the start of a list of your values, strengths, and skills that were present, take a moment to reflect on the following. What was most evident to you? What role did you play in the positive outcome? Where do you see these values, strengths, and skills present in your life now? And what is one goal you can set to continue growing and living your values and strengths? We spend so many of our waking hours at work that the overall environment and relationships we have at our jobs are an important part of our wellness. It starts with understanding what kind of work is meaningful to you and making goals and taking actions toward the kind of work you want. But what can you do once you get there? You're still in an environment with other people that you need to collaborate and communicate with. Or what can you do to make your work environment healthy while you explore options? One of the best ways to cultivate a healthy work environment is to work on your communication and relationship development skills. Cultivating healthy work relationships includes more compassion than we often talk about. This means working on our emotional intelligence, which is essentially self-awareness of our own emotions and triggers, self-management of our emotions, which is different than stuffing them down, ignoring, or masking them. It is acknowledgement without losing control. Social awareness, being aware of how the people around us might be feeling, and relationship management, listening without judgment and responding appropriately to our coworkers' needs, taking stock of our relationships so we can maintain contact where needed. Additionally, a recognition that we are interdependent, that we all need each other as we navigate our human needs, promotes the elements of emotional intelligence we just mentioned, and more. When interdependence is recognized, there is clear communication, openness to each other, and safety. This activity demonstrates what it feels like when a team validates each other and creates safe spaces for idea sharing and collaboration. So we're going to break up into groups, and for round one, each person is going to be in charge of planning a party. You're all in charge of planning a party as a committee. One at a time, each person will contribute an idea for planning that party. For round one, team members will respond by saying something like, yeah, but, or I can see where you're going with that, but, and then give a reason why their idea won't work. The next team member will offer an idea, and it likewise will get rejected by everyone else. Repeat until everyone in the group has had a chance to offer an idea. So here's how that might look. If I say, wow, for this party, I think we really should have a chocolate fountain. The next person might say something like, yeah, that seems like a good idea in theory, but we don't have the kind of money to have a chocolate fountain. And then the next person might say, yeah, and I think that there are several people in the office that are allergic to chocolate, right? So each of you are going to turn down that idea. And then the next person is going to offer an idea, and everyone in the group is going to turn it down. Once you're done with that, we'll come back together for another round. So for round 2, you're planning a party again. Same premise. This time, when someone offers the first idea, each team member is going to accept that idea and add to it. So, for example, if I go back to the chocolate fountain idea, I might say, I really think this party needs a chocolate fountain. And the next person might say, that's a really good idea, and we should have strawberries for that chocolate fountain. And the next person might say, yes, I think that's an awesome idea. And what goes great with chocolate and strawberries? Some champagne. So the important distinction here is that you're really listening to the idea that was put before you, and you're adding to that specific idea, rather than waiting just for your chance to speak. So when you're waiting for your chance to speak, what that looks like is person 1 might say, I think we should have a chocolate fountain. And person 2 might say, that's a great idea. We should also have elephants. Do you see how elephants have nothing to do with a chocolate fountain? However, if person 2 had said something like, that's a great idea, and we should have elephants using their trunks to create the fountain effect. There's a difference between those two pieces, right? So I want you to be listening to what was said before you and making sure you find a way to add to it rather than just adding a random idea in that has nothing to do with it. All right, you'll have a few minutes to complete this. So coming back from that activity, how did that feel? How did it feel to have your ideas rejected or accepted? How does this experience compare to real life? And what can we learn about listening from this exercise? When we increase our willingness and ability to be more accepting of the viewpoints and ideas of others, we build connection. Building connection helps in cultivating relationships and assists in creating a healthy work environment. We've discussed how aligning our work with values, talents, gifts, and knowledge contributes to our wellness. We've also learned how relationship building and adopting a growth mindset cultivates a healthy work environment. Let's talk about why making time for leisure activities is important. Studies have shown that leisure activity provides relief from stress, improves our mood, has various physiological benefits such as lower heart rate, keeps us from being bored because they engage our minds, and these benefits stick with us for hours after we've completed the activity. Most people have activities they enjoy during their free time. The key to gaining the benefits of leisure activity is to find ways to do them away from other distractions, especially work distractions. Bringing mindful attention to activities might include simply turning off our phones or closing our laptops. It might include declaring a me hour or leaving the house once in a while to engage in one of your favorite activities. What could you do to make time for leisure activities? For this activity, you are going to make a list of 10 things that bring you joy and 10 activities that align with your values, skills, and talents but you haven't tried yet. These should be activities that you love to do. If you're having trouble thinking of anything right now, think back to things you used to love but haven't had a chance to engage in recently. If doing them will still bring you joy, then add it to the list. Let's get out a piece of paper and spend some time on this now. Now, get your calendar out and schedule at least one appointment where you will engage in one of the activities from your list. Reflecting on what we've discussed today, what are one or two things you plan to do to work on your own occupational wellness? Some additional resources for this module. There are some questionnaires on exploring your values. There's a great strengths-based questionnaire at viacharacter.org on finding your strengths, and there's building your emotional intelligence. If you have any questions, please share them now.